So how do you, if you are outgunned by somebody, they're bigger, stronger, faster, whatever, right? How do you neutralize their advantage before you can even start moving forward to give yourself an advantage? How do you get past the video surveillance society that we have, where you need to be able to defend yourself, but how do you do that without coming across? See, anyway, right? Dai-shihan Miller here with another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. This is actually part 3 in a 3-part series that I started a couple of episodes ago on advanced ninja manipulation tactics. Okay, so in this one, we're going to take a look at what Hatsumi Sensei has called small points of control, right? But I've just kind of expanded on it. Small points of control, huge impact on your advantage, okay? There's an acronym out there floating around in the business world and a bunch of other places, right? It's called HIMI, H-I-M-I, high impact, minimal effort, right? So that sums up ninjutsu, right, in just 4 short letters, okay? So anyway, what we're doing is taking a look at these, using these small points of control to get your opponent to help you execute your technique without them knowing it, okay? So we've been talking about this, right? In part 1, we'll try to make sure that in description there's links to parts 1 and 2, and we'll have to backdate the other ones to make sure that there are these links that cross over and people can move from one to the next. But anyway, in part 1, we took a look at manipulation tactics to get somebody to grab us, right? Because often there's this feeling in the fight world or whatever. And if you look at any of my videos that have like a wrist grab, clothing grab, or whatever, you'll always get these guys that do nothing but punch or punch and kick or whatever to say, I've never grabbed anybody in a fight. Nobody does that. I don't remember a time that anybody has ever grabbed me in a fight or whatever, right? Okay, I get it. Okay, but what we took a look at is how to get somebody like that, somebody who would not normally grab, to grab you, right? Somebody who will grab regardless of whether they're a grabber, whether they plan to, anything like that, right? Okay. In part 2, we took a look at other manipulation tactics to get somebody, again, to do things out of context, and the whole point is to weaken their advantage, right? So part 2 was more about psychological things. They're all about psychological things, but more on how to affect him in a way that you're affecting his decision making and things like that, right? In this one, we're going to take a look at actually controlling the physical, right? Because we take a look at our Sanmitsu, thought, word, and deed, right? Okay, now we've got intention, which was part 1, the psychological, the knowledge, right? What he thinks he knows about what's going on and whatnot, right? That one, and then the physical activity, action, and whatnot. So that's what we're taking a look at during this one. All right. So hopefully you've been along for the ride, and if not, no big deal. If you're on YouTube, you can always go back and take a look at things. If you're on our Facebook page, Online Ninjutsu Training, I think that's the one, right? You can just back scroll or whatever, right? Beat scrolling to watch another cat video. Anyway, right? So got a lot to cover during this one. So I'm gonna do what I normally do. I'm gonna start off with a problem, okay? And the problem is in translating the way ninjutsu is very often translated, which is the art of invisibility, okay? So in a previous episode, I talked about Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? Which is crucial to anybody that is trying to understand real Budo, right? Bujutsu, warfare, conflict, those kind of things, and how to come out on top, right? How to be the winner, okay? But when people read Sun Tzu's Art of War, when they're considering ninjutsu or ninja or whatever, right? As long as we're not thinking about turtles. Anyway, they tend to think that only chapter 13, right? There's 13 chapters in Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? They think that only chapter 13 has anything to do with ninja because it's about using spies. It's about the art of stealth and things like that, right? But when I first read The Art of War, almost from the first sentence, right? Almost from the first paragraph, like lessons from my teacher, lessons from Hatsumi Sensei just kept pinging in my brain, right? And as I read each section, each chapter, the whole thing is there, right? So it is literally, right? It's a very short read, but man, it's just loaded with this stuff, okay? So what's funny is that the art of invisibility is hidden within a general strategy text. Interesting, right? So, but where does all this fall in the grander scheme of training, right? Well, there's a phrase in the teachings, right? And that is this ideal or this goal of becoming invisible in the eyes of the enemy or the eyes of the opponent, right? So this can mean many things. It can mean anything from outright like being unseen, right? Actual stealth, can't see you, can't hear you, whatever, right? To just a lot more, right? And we keep touching on these things in these episodes, okay? So just like in our Mikyo practice, right? Mandala and whatnot come from, excuse me, just like in our Mikyo practice, there's this concept of mantra, right? The recitation of mantra, right? It's the use of speech, right, as a part of the practice. Okay, it's one of the sanmitsu, right? One of the triple secrets for success. But where people tend to, and this is where people get thrown off, they look at the outward example or references or, I don't know, free YouTube videos or whatever, and they latch on to a thing, okay? This is called anchoring bias, right? This is what's behind everybody who wants to tell us that nobody fights that way, this is the way fights happen and whatnot. Well, chances are that's the way they were introduced to things, right? It's called anchoring bias, a whole bunch of biases that are subconscious back here, right? And then that's what they get stuck on, and they gauge everything else in the world based on that. Mommy and daddy taught me that. My martial arts teacher taught me that. My whatever, okay? And right, we anchor on, and there's a whole lot more behind it, right? We like the person, we trust them. I don't like that person. I don't like what they look like. I don't like how they dress, so I'm not going to believe anything they say. He's got orange hair, whatever, right? Okay. And then it just filters everything else, and then we make every decision based on that. Okay. Now, we want to make sure we're not falling into those traps, but if we know that everybody else does it, they become like marionettes. You know what that is? Marionettes, right? It's the first two are the names of my first two wives. Anyway, so marionettes are a type of puppet that are on strings, and you just, right, you call the shots. Okay. So anyway, that was a joke. Anyway, but with regards to this mantra, there are actually like 5 levels of mantra, right? From the actual spoken, whether you do it in Sanskrit or you do it in Japanese or Chinese. So you say this phrase and you think about what it means, right? All the way through saying it without thinking about what it means, because you know when you say it, right? We don't have to think about the meaning we're trying to convey to a person when we're talking. We just open our mouth and the internal thoughts come out, and we say what needs to be said, right? We're not running a dialogue in our head, hopefully not, right? While we're communicating, we just do it, okay? So that's like phase 3. That's like the 3rd type of mantra, all the way to you don't even say it, and you're not thinking it in your head. That's actually phase 4, right? It's just pure intent, right? It's just pure intent. I want something to happen, and it happens, okay? Anyway, so the same is true for invisibility, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this. I got 5 pages of notes for you guys today. So, and we've got, what, less than an hour to get through this? So anyway, but before we get too far into this, before I forget again, right, please make sure you like, share, and or subscribe to make sure you get notifications of every one of these things that pop out, and that other people that could use it, right? Facebook, YouTube, whatever, shows this stuff so that other folks can derive the benefit, right? Anyway, so quick story here, right? Just recently, I was doing a class, and we were talking about manipulation and control. And what I was doing was I was teaching students about how our kamae, right, influences our attacker's thoughts, perceptions, beliefs, assumptions, whatever, about a lot of different things, about our fight style, about what we're intending to do, how we're protecting ourselves, what we, whether we're going to fight, whether we're going to run, whatever, okay? And so here's the thing. If I'm controlling those, if the kamae is controlling those, then by default, we are controlling his decisions, his plans, his strategy, right? And his actions, okay? So manipulation and control happens, and this is what I was taught as a white belt, happens long before the attacker ever realizes that he lost it. And this has been a recurring theme through all of these, parts 1 through 3, right? So, but before we jump into manipulation and what some of these small points are and whatnot, and again, there's a bunch of these things. I'm doing my 3x3 matrix kind of thing, so we're covering 3 of each just to kind of get you started, right? This is that big picture kind of thing, okay? So we're going to start off with 3 definitions, okay? And this I'm going to be touching on these in certain ways as we move through, but again, this is one of those things where Hatsumi Sensei has said it. He's reinforced it by teaching teachers this important lesson, and even the Buddha said it, right? So people much wiser than me. And the crux of the lesson is you need to figure this stuff out for yourself. Okay, there's way too many people lamenting that they're all by themselves. They don't have any training partners. There's no dojo that's near them or whatever. I don't give a shit, right? There's always something we can do training wise. Okay, and there's a long history behind this that goes way, way back before the advent of this idea of a dojo. Okay, the dojo concept is a relatively new thing within the last 100 years or so, right? Maybe 200 years, but that's relatively new compared to the fact that this stuff was created during the Sengoku Jidai Warring States period, right? Way, way back, right? So, no. And on top of that, even if you're a member of a dojo, even if you have a teacher, whatever, okay? And so one of Hatsumi Sensei's lessons to teachers is you need to create situations where it exacerbates the problem they're having. It makes it worse. So they have to figure things out. And even if they come back to you with another question a day or a week later or whatever, the nature of that question is going to be better. Okay? Because generally speaking, a teacher can't, well, in the West, we've learned that if we just ask the teacher the right questions, usually like, is this on the test? Then we know how lazy we can be and what we need to focus on, because all I give a shit about is passing the test, right? So, but often the way students, they're making a mistake or the way they're trying to get the problem fixed, let's just say that they're not asking to be spoon-fed knowingly, okay? They really don't know how to formulate the question because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they can't see. That's going to be a big point in what I'm covering today. Okay, there's this huge thing. Anyway, so let's take a look at 3 definitions. All right, and so the first one is chushin. Okay, chushin. I'll just write it in Romaji. Chushin. Okay, chushin, not chushin. It's the same. Okay, it's just written differently. Okay, this one means core, right? It can also mean center. Okay. I'll come back to this one in a minute. This chushin, different kanji right here, right? This chushin means heartfelt. It means sincerity. It represents genuine feelings or emotion that comes from the depth of your heart, right? It's genuine. It's not fake, right? In the martial arts, it represents sincerity, earnestness in one's dedication to his or her training, right? And in their interactions within their dojo, within the martial arts community, that kind of thing, right? It encompasses qualities like, again, dedication, honesty, authenticity in their practice. They're not trying to cheat the system. They're not only doing what they want because it feels good. They don't train just when on the days they feel motivated to train. Okay, I just posted a meme today. If you're on Facebook, I can't remember if I put it on the Kuden page or the online ninjutsu training page, but it was, contrary to popular belief, motivation is not a necessary element in doing what is required to accomplish the goals that we've set for ourselves, right? What we need to do is develop the discipline necessary to do the required, even when we don't feel like it. And that's one of the differences between the successful and the ones who are pissed at the successful because of envy and pride and shit like that. Anyway, all right. So chushin, this is an important quality. It's just not what we're talking about today. This one, chushin, this center or core, again, it starts long before he realizes that he lost it, right? But even this, right? I talked about mantra having 5 levels, right? A lot of these things have multiple levels, okay? So there's many aspects to this, right? It could mean the core principles of the art you're studying. It could mean the core or essential nature, the kotsu, right, of any technique that you're doing, right? It could mean the core or center of his attack or of his strength or the center of his movement, right? His fight style. What does he need to generate the power in that particular punch he does, or that roundhouse kick, or whatever it is? Okay. See, I know this is hard, right? Because we need to study more than just the moves, right? This is heiho, okay? Heiho, not hey-ho, not that, right? Heiho, 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 right? The way of battle, military tactics, okay? Understanding conflict, understanding what causes it, understanding different types of strategies and how to neutralize those things. It's very important, okay? Anyway, so again, any one of these things, right? Any one of these types of cores or centers that I just mentioned, right? If we know and understand them, they can be manipulated, they can be controlled, and we can use them to create more, not just effective results, but efficient results. One of the core tenets of ninjutsu is not effectiveness. There's a shit ton of martial arts and fight styles out there. They're all effective, right? But one of the core tenets of this art is efficiency, right? The rule of nature when it comes to survival is energy conservation, right? I mentioned it earlier, that modern acronym, HIME, H-I-M-E, high impact, minimum effort. How do I produce the same or better results with less effort? I need to understand the science, okay? And that doesn't mean I have to go to school for it or whatever. So for people that, whatever, okay? Just calm your jets, right? Or cool your jets, right? Next one is tenouchi, okay? Tenouchi, okay? Tenouchi conventionally points to the center of the hand, okay? The center of the hand, right? And so it can refer to the center of the hand, catching him by his hand, by his fingers or whatever, in a way that literally locks up the center of the hand. But this is ninjutsu, right? So lots more meanings. It can also refer to the secrets, techniques, or skills held within one's hands, okay? It implies the hidden or internal aspects, right, of one's martial arts practice, right? The more you practice, the more you're looking for, the more you find, you start to see things that are hidden to most, right? But it also includes like the subtle movements, strategies, applications of techniques that may not be apparent, just like immediately apparent, right, to any observer, right? We talk about these trolls that make comments on the videos, right? And what's funny, and they don't even know they're doing it, right? They leave a comment about how they would beat the technique I or anybody else just demonstrated. But the reality that they're missing is that they came up with that solution after watching the technique. In an actual engagement, they don't have that benefit, right? If their ESP is that good, they already know that I'm going to ignore them, so why leave a comment? Unless, see, their intent isn't about shutting me down, it's about getting attention to themselves and getting the cheerleaders that are the other trolls say, ooh, that was a good one, man. Okay? That kind of stuff, right? But I've had comments about, did he leave the tags on his pants and stuff? Okay, here's a hidden point, right? If they don't know what these things are, and the fact that they came from Japanese temples, right, and they have a certain meaning that focuses my attention in certain areas in my life and in my training, if they don't know what this is, how can they assume they're going to do it anyway? But how can they assume that they know what they're looking at with the rest of the technique? Okay, so anyway, right? So tenouchi, right? So in this sense, tenouchi can represent the depth of knowledge, proficiency, and understanding that you and I possess in our martial arts training. Okay. So it goes way, way deeper. Okay. And then I ran out of space down here. Otherwise, I'd have written out the Japanese and written out the. So what I want to have here, te no uchi, te no uchi. Okay. So how do I sum up what I just said about te no uchi? Be nice if I wrote that down too, right? So this is the, because center of the hand, right, is also, if you close your hand, now whatever's in it is hidden. Okay. So this is the hidden, not readily apparent, right? Hidden aspects of your training that others can't see. Okay. So there's another phrase for this I'll talk about later on, hidden points and things like that, where he knows that it's there, he just doesn't know what it does. He doesn't know it can be used, those kind of things, right? Or it's kind of like the rim of my glasses. Okay. I used to wear glasses that had bigger frames. Okay. I know, right? Oh, nobody wears that since the 70s. Yeah, except that I needed the frame outside of my field of vision because it was distracting. Yes, but you'll get used to it. No, they're still there, right? Because as your level of awareness goes up, the more fine things you pay attention to, no, they're still there. But for most people, they get used to it and these things disappear. The edge disappears until somebody like me hits this instead of the side of their head, right? Because he thinks I'm going to hit him in the side of the head, and he moves just enough to not get hit in the head, but I was really aiming for that. And now I've gouged this huge thing in his nose, right? Or slammed things into his eye joint, right? Because he knows it's there because he put his glasses on. He just doesn't pay attention to it. Okay. So it's that kind of idea. Anyway, so this next one is chikara o kanji sasanai, right? Chikara o kanji sasanai, right? This doesn't have a really good English translation, right? Like a lot of things, right? But at its core, it's something like not allowing one's strength to be felt, not allowing him to feel your power. Okay, that kind of thing, right? So everything is hidden, right? And this is not just in our art, it's in Aikido, it's in Judo and things like that, right? Where you're using things like leverage, timing, positioning, that kind of thing to create the technique instead of brute force, right? Instead of strength, okay? You can always tell when you're not getting a technique right because you got to muscle it in this art, right? But if you come from an art like, or a fighting system or whatever, a sport, whatever, like wrestling or whatever, any of those things where it's about that kind of thing, right? This tends to be an alien concept because, well, how the hell do I apply the lock, hold, or throw if I don't lock, hold, or throw him? See, if you have to know about these hidden points. Anyway, all right. So this phrase often appears in martial arts context, particularly in Japanese martial arts. Again, like Aikido, Judo, Ninjutsu, right? Where we're emphasizing techniques that don't rely on physical strength, but we're really looking, again, leverage, timing, proper body mechanics, those kind of things to both control and neutralize his force effectively and also to apply our technique, right? So, but this can also refer to the ability to execute techniques smoothly, right? And subtly without telegraphing your intentions or exerting unnecessary force, okay? So the whole idea here is maintaining a sense of fluidity and adaptability in that combat situation, but he can't feel what you're doing, okay? Because, and this is going to come up again, if he can feel what you're doing, he will consciously or unconsciously resist it, jam it up, or counter it, okay? And in ninjutsu, even your base techniques, right? You go all the way back to the sanshin and the kyonapo and start looking at these things from the perspective of Kyujutsu Tenkan, disguising truth and falsehood, okay? And the premise that in ninjutsu, nothing is ever what it looks like. And then come at your techniques again. Because people will do those. Hatsumi Sensei says, you know, you have to know these things, do them every day. And people stop very early on as soon as they can do the step by step because ego goes, Yep, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. What's next? What's next is you look at him again from a different perspective. What can't you see? Because that's where the power is. If you can't see it from where you are now, most people will never see it. So if you can uncover those hidden things, you'll be using things and approaching this situation, using those techniques, using those kamae in ways that he's not going to see. Okay, so chikara o kanji sasanai, right? Basically, don't let him feel your, I'm going to write the word power, but it could be strength, it could be intention, anything like that. Okay, so again, Friday's class is all about that. There's the URL for it, where we're going to be doing some physical examples of these things so that this makes more sense. Okay, so the page is already set up. You want to go there and get signed up. I only got 20 slots, so if you want to do it, great. If not, figure it out for yourself. Okay, so all right, that being said, let's move into the 3 types of small or not so small points. And what we're talking about here are things that can't be seen, but that can be used. Okay, can't be seen, but can be used. Right. So, and to get this as simple as possible. Right. The first one is posture. Okay. And I already mentioned kamae, right? I already mentioned that your kamae from its very base closes certain windows, opens certain windows, makes him think, judge, perceive, believe, whatever, all kinds of things. Okay, you take up an ichimonji no kamae, the average fighter who is a puncher kicker, right? The average one will go, I can grab or hit your hand or your arm, and I can sweep your lead leg. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. He just told you how he will attack that kamae. So instead of going, no, you can't, okay, you need to make sure that your hand is just floating out here. And when he goes to grab it, it's easy to ride that off and go back to position. And you need to make sure your weight distribution and your alignment of your body is right so that when he goes to sweep or attack that leg, you can pull it without moving your torso first. Okay. If you can't, he will be right. Okay, because he can, no matter what it looks like. If it doesn't work right, okay, there could be a car sitting out in this parking lot, looks brand new, but if it doesn't have the engine in it, it's not going anywhere. Okay, from the outside, a lot of people's kamae look like that car with no engine. Okay, so let's not let our beliefs blow smoke up our own ass. Okay, so but what I'm talking about here with this posture is more of a positioning of the limbs and our targets. Okay, so I'll talk about this more when we get over to manipulation, right? But this isn't just the kamae, it's in the middle of techniques. How do I position my targets so they're actually bait that he wants to go after them, but when he goes after it, he runs right into my technique. Okay, he actually that going after the bait creates the technique. Position of my limbs. Okay, and again, when we get to the manipulation stuff, all the stuff will start to come together. Right. Next one, I'm calling Kyusho no Chushin. We already talked about Chushin being the center or the core. Right. Kyusho means weak points. Okay, and we're not just talking about pressure points. Way too many people mistranslate this stuff and they minimize things. We did a whole Whiteboard Wednesday way back, right? 100 or so episodes back on Kyusho, right? And 5 different types of Kyusho, right? Not 5 different points on the body, 5 different classifications of Kyusho. And I think the 5th one had to do with health considerations. So we took that one off the board and stuck to the 4 that had to do with like fighting and self-defense, okay? So you can look that one up. But anyway, so Kyusho no Chushin. So this is weak points on his center, or weak points in the center of things. Okay, so I'll explain here a little bit, right? What I want to do is I want to place the hand, or the fingers, or something like that, right, on a center line. What's the center line? depends on his fight style. Okay. But I'm going to put it on his center line in a way that makes it difficult for him to advance or go around. In the scrolls, it says take center. What does that mean? Depends on the technique. Depends on his fight style, right? But I'm taking center because that creates a wall or a barrier that he can't get through, or he has a difficult time getting through, right? That creates certain types of control, right? We're controlling, again, 5 different types of mantra. How many different types of control? Okay. So again, we're already doing this with proper kamae. Okay. And if we don't understand how that works, then we don't really understand our kamae. We're seeing our kamae as dachi. Dachi are stances. Okay. Dachi are like cannons where you launch things from. Okay. Kamae are very, very dynamic things. Right. So we have posture, but again, positioning of targets, positioning of limbs. It's easier to show than it is to describe, but this is strategy and tactics. So Friday, or take a look at techniques and see how Hatsumi Sensei or any master teacher does it. Okay. So Kyusho Chushin is placing hand, finger, whatever, in a place where if he advances, it hurts. But here's something that goes even farther than that. It's one thing to have him run into something where it's going to hurt, right? If we take up a seigan or an ichimonji, right? This general kind of thing. The fingertips are supposed to be between your eyes and his eyes, right? Well, my teacher said it's supposed to point at his eyes, and my fingertips are pointing at his eyes. Well, you know that. Does he know that? Because if he doesn't know that, this isn't a problem. Okay? That's a problem. He can't look at you without staring at your fingertips. Okay? That's a control, right? If he punches and I just go to ichimonji, right? If I do my ichimonji correctly, I have wet fingertips because they just jammed into one or both eyes. Right? Going into kamae is an attack. Okay? So anyway, and then the last one here, I'll give you 2 different phrases. We're going to come back to both of them. Totte de totanai, right? Which means to take him without taking him. I'll explain that more, right? We're going to dive into that one a lot, right? But there's this other term, kakureta yosho, which means hidden or concealed points, okay? So the totte de totanai, this is really a play on words. It doesn't translate well into English, again, right? But again, take him without taking him, grab him without grabbing him, strike him without striking him. It sounds like double talk, and most people don't want to, that makes no sense to them, okay? Unless we understand that there's a certain point in space that if my limb or my weapon touches or breaches that position, the target that's behind it will move as though it got hit. You can call it flinch response, you can call it whatever, but I was taught a long time ago that I need to treat near misses the same as I treat a hit. Most people want to make contact because, well, in sport, you get a point. But if you don't touch him, then you don't get a point. Or they're thinking about causing pain or damage, not about setting the guy up. But if I throw a punch and I hit him in the face and his head moves a certain way, or I throw that punch and it breaches that line and his head moves the same way to not get hit, what mattered is that the head moved the way the head moved to affect the rest of the body. But often I see students, they'll miss and then immediately go, oh, I messed up. And they want to reset. Well, one, in an actual situation, you don't have that luxury. Okay, so keep going. But for the advanced practitioner, we can take him without taking him. We can hit him without hitting him because we're looking for the effect of the strike or the feint, not blood or broken bone or whatever. We'll get to that, right? But meanwhile, while he's dodging this one, it'd be like well, it's if you've ever seen UFC fighters, they're really, really good, right? They'll be going at the head, and the other guy's got his hands up, and all of a sudden, these head strikes, right? One will turn into an uppercut, and that uppercut, regardless of whether it's going to cause damage or not, when it comes under, the flinch response on this guy that's covering is to drop to cover that, and the next thing you know, bang, they're getting hit up here, right? So it's moving his consciousness around in the fight. But if you understand physiology, then you can the angle that you're coming in and all that, right, causes, right, because you come in at a different angle, the head's going to move differently, break his balance, and cause him to stumble away. That changes things. But if I get it to move a different way, it locks up the spine and his feet won't move. It's different. Okay. Anyway, all right. So where am I here? Right. Actually, I'm going to use the hidden points here. So kakureta. Yeah, kakureta. Yosho. Okay, so this is hidden or concealed points. Hidden or concealed points. Okay, I know, sloppy writing. Anyway, all right. So the idea here, well, let's explain a little class, right? Hatsumi Sensei was in a class. Hatsumi Sensei was teaching us about control, right? But what he was trying to get to was it's not accomplished by purely physical means. To most people, control is accomplished through force, right? I'm going to threaten this person with an or else, or I'm going to grab him and move him, or I'm going to threaten them with physical damage or whatever. No. We need to, if we affect the controller, we affect everything else. Okay. And then he can't help himself because that's his natural response to what he perceives going on. Okay. So, but again, not by purely physical means. So what he said was, don't grab, right? It's neither grabbing nor not grabbing. Don't punch. It's neither punching nor not punching, right? Again, it goes back to this taking him without taking him. Okay. So here's the question. What's in between grabbing and not grabbing when you're trying to control someone? Okay. This in between space, I just talked about it, right? There's this point, right? That if we get to it or breach it, his body starts responding as though we hit it, or there's a way to like almost grab somebody, or to move in like you're going to grab, right? And their body will lock down to resist being pushed or pulled. Well, I didn't have to hold him in place now. He's holding him in place. Okay, it's a cool thing, right? Again, it's just going to happen for a microsecond, but in that, what can you do in that moment, right? So, and this is what I require for my guys that are going from 3rd to 4th degree black belt, okay? Which Bujinkan ranking above 10. So, what I need for them to get is not just the technique. What I need them to have is a lot of experience with what happens when you do this thing. They understand karma, cause and effect, right? So, my students need to understand different fight styles, right? So instead of responding to things, since they now know where he will be when he gets where he's going, instead of chasing him, they can just meet him. It's like my wife and I are out shopping, and we meet at the same place. We took separate cars because I've got my grandson and the car seat's in my car, whatever. Maybe she was coming from work. We meet someplace, and then afterwards, I'm going to head straight home, but she needs to run a pit stop to grab something. And we say, I'll meet you at home. We do it all the time, right? I don't have to follow my wife so that we both end up at home. That's not necessary, okay? I know where she will be when she gets where she's going. So I just meet her there, right? It's the same thing from a combat perspective. But again, I'm traversing space in a way that doesn't trigger him because I'm not following him, right? I'm not chasing him. I'm just going to take a shortcut and meet him where he ends up. Okay. All right. So let's see. What do I have here in my notes? Right. So it was this in between in this class, right? It was this in between space that he was trying to show us, right? And here's a huge revelation, right? For your training, if you're ready for it, right? Soke said, don't do more than necessary by grabbing or by hitting or by kicking or whatever, right? Don't do more than necessary. The moment his body starts to move as if you kicked him, you can stop your kick, or it locks down to resist the grab as you reach in to grab him. You don't need the rest of the movement, okay? So don't do more than necessary by grabbing, kicking, whatever, right? But trying not to grab is also doing too much, right? So you have to be in the middle, right? That middle space is where you can disappear. Shit, we're back to invisibility again. Anyway, all right? So this can happen when you're neither taking nor not taking, but what you do take, right, are things you can't see. You can't see it in space. I mean, we know where it is, but it's not a physical object to be able to be seen, like his hand or his wrist or whatever, okay? So if you can't see it, but you know it's there, he can't see it. It's kind of like this point right here in the wrist, okay? When we grab, right, most people, when we're doing wrist grabs or teihodoki or whatever, most practitioners grab the way most people grab, okay? I got it. No, you don't. If I can move my elbow and my shoulder, I can move my whole body around. You don't have crap. You're holding this meat sack. And I can rotate my bones, my skeleton, inside the meat sack. You got to be exceedingly strong to keep my bones from moving. And either way, as long as I have my elbow and my shoulder, you don't have me. You're holding something, but you don't even have my wrist. Because to have my wrist is to have the joint. Okay? So there's a point in here that if it's free, we can move all over the place. So the point of grabbing is grabbing in a way, right, that locks that point. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff that's not in the scrolls because it was past Kuden or was just understood by warriors. So when you grab and you grab correctly, which is very much like holding a sword or a knife, right? When I grab this correctly, I take away the ability to use the elbow and the shoulder, okay? And so the first thing that I have to do with teihodoki is unlock that point. And unlocking the point is like doing a togakure boshiken, right? But I have to unlock that, okay? So I can't see that bone adjustment through my skin, but I know it's there. So I can grab him, and if he grabs me and immobilizes my arm, I know what he did on purpose or by accident. So I know before I try to do the rest of the technique that everybody gets all warm and fuzzy about, the first thing I have to do is unlock that point to get my elbow and shoulder back. Now I can do whatever I want. Yeah, but he's got your wrist. Yeah, great. Here's another hidden point. If he's holding on to me, he can't hit me with that thing. He has to let go to use it again. So if somebody grabs me, I'm exceedingly grateful because he just took weapons out of the fight, right? This is a whole different way of thinking about things, okay? I can't take credit for it. I only came up with some of this stuff based on initial lessons from teachers. But I had to figure it out for myself as far as how it works and why it works. Because as Hatsumi Sensei and other teachers have said along the way, I can't teach this. I can demonstrate examples of it. I can explain it and hint at it. But you have to learn it for yourself. You have to experiment with it. You have to figure it out, whatever. Because me showing you that on a two-dimensional screen right here, even if you try to do this with yourself, right? Until you understand what that lock feels like and how that bone shifts when you do this thing, right? Because if you move the wrong muscles, you can extend your thumb, but you don't move the bones. Okay? So interesting stuff. All right? So again, it's those things that are in between, right? Those invisible things are really what's controlling the opponent, right? He can't see those bones. He doesn't. Most people don't even know physiology or how their damn body's put together. So when you grab that, it just feels like you're putting a lot of pressure on it and you feel strong. But really, you're not. You just have a certain position. It's kind of like handshaking, right? If nothing, well, there's lots of other things that irritate me than a weak handshake, but I'm not shaking hands with a wet noodle, right? But people will often like just grab hard to like handshake and all that, right? That's too much from a warrior standpoint, because this person can just slam you. You got to let go to block, to do all kinds of things, right? But you can have a caring handshake by coming webbing to webbing and then grasping their hand, little finger, ring finger, middle finger, like you're levering a sword this way. Shake the hand. You have plenty of meat-to-meat contact, right? It's a firm handshake without being firm because of the contact, but your thumb and index finger are free to attack Kyusho in the hand should you need to. Okay. Anyway, so again, this Tote de Totenai that I covered earlier, right? Where'd I have that? Tote de Totenai. I think I put that in there. Okay. So this idea of taking them without taking them, grabbing them without grabbing, that kind of thing, right? Again, it's a play on words, not a really good English translation, but it emphasizes the concept of taking or controlling without taking or controlling directly, right? So again, right, controlling without controlling, that kind of thing, right? So in the martial arts context, it could describe techniques that involved redirecting or manipulating an opponent's movements without overtly grabbing or striking. So how do I get him to move? How do I direct his movement, that kind of thing, without actually touching him? Okay. It can include techniques that use leverage, timing, positioning, whatever, to control an opponent's balance and movement without relying solely on brute force. I keep coming back to the same thing, right? Emphasizes the importance of subtlety, finesse, and strategic thinking in martial arts practice. Okay. All right. So we have those. Let's round this out, right? 3 ways to manipulate. Okay. 3 ways to manipulate, right? So first one, coming right off this posture and positioning, is to position your targets so he's lured by them. Okay. So this is positioning, right? So we're position, right? 1, your targets. Okay. Again, this is better demonstrated or easier demonstrated than explained. But if a punch comes in and I shift a certain way so that misses, but my target comes in front of that fist over there, what's he doing next? Chances are he's going to punch or grab with that fist because of my positioning, right? So I already know that's coming. Okay. But if at the same time, okay, if at the same time that I move to avoid that, I stick my finger out there right here. Let's say he's coming in basic taijutsu stuff, right? And I stick my finger, my thumb, right on the butsumetsu, right here, okay? When he goes to take that next shot, he's going to impale himself on this finger, okay? Which causes a flinch response, okay? And then I'm going to, while he's busy flinching from this, his consciousness is here. I'm going to slide my hand up behind his elbow. And then in quarter to half a second, he's going to figure out how to get off that finger. So when he comes in with the next shot, or wants to come in with the next shot, right? Remember, I'm taking this up to here. So as soon as I take it away, he's going to want to come in. So I'll show this on Friday. I'll make it a point to show this particular thing. Out of the way, create that moment, right? And then as I take it away and come up behind the elbow to create a muso dori or a ganseki nage, right? I'm going to throw an elbow near his face. So he backs away from it. One of 2 things is going to happen when that happens. When he backs away, he's either going to back into my hand or my arm, locking out that shoulder, starting the ganseki or the muso dori. Or he's going to back away from it, and as he comes in to get me, he's already starting the forward movement that this ganseki produces, so I'm just going to help him along the way. Okay? Again, easy to describe. You'd have to see it. Okay? So again, I'm positioning my targets to lure him in, right? So when he takes the bait, he plays right into the technique and actually helps create it. Okay. One of the ways, and this is an invisible kind of thing, this is very, very advanced. One of the things you have to worry about that nobody talks about in a self-defense situation is defending after the actual fight. You might have to defend against the legal system, but I wouldn't worry about the legal system just yet, because you might have to worry about something called revenge or a vendetta, where you whip his ass. Okay? And this isn't like the rule of the neighborhood where I got my ass kicked, so okay, right? One on him, right? This is Thug Central where you whipped his ass, great. He goes home and gets his family or 5 of his friends, and they all come back with clubs and whatever. Okay? So how do you defend against the instinct to want to get you back? One of the ways to do that is to leave him believing that he made the mistake that caused his downfall. You didn't do it to him, he did it to him. And if you can make your technique look like a panic attack or you weren't fighting him, everything ended up, this is one of the things again, for my 4th dans, they have to be able to make all their techniques look like an accident, like a mistake. Okay? Which means they really need to know where the chushin, where the core or center of that technique is, so they can catch it. Okay? So it's very, very different, right? Because we're not just defending against his punches and knives and shit like that. You defend against that, that's great. What's he doing 5 minutes from now? Did he go to the car and come back with a gun? Right? How do I, right? Because the problem that a lot of people have is they think like teenagers. And what that means is they think they can't think outside of the moment they're in. And then they end up in the emergency room of the morgue because they couldn't see big enough. Hey-ho takes into account not just this skirmish, what will that produce? Okay. So anyway, all right. Second way to manipulate, right, is to create barriers. Okay. So barriers where? On his center line. Where's his center line? Depends on his fight style. Okay. So put barriers on his center line, and you can start by just understanding how your kamae and correct kamae alignment with his posture, not just correct kamae positioning my body parts to my body parts, but my body parts lined up with him, and how the selection of the kamae makes him come at you a certain way, right? And if I understand his fight style, then I'm going to take up, well, depends, right? If I want to help him do what he does best so he walks into a freaking bear trap, that's one thing. But I highly recommend that beginners or people new to this concept learn to match their kamae to fight styles based on the kamae that will inhibit his ability to do what he's good at. That way he has to make shit up on the fly. He can't just do what he always does. He can't do what he's good at because shit's in his way. Okay? So barriers. This can be done with hand. It can be done with finger. It can be done in hicho, right? It's not just done here, but this knee, right? It's both covering your groin and it's a punji stick that's right on his center line. So it inhibits good kicks. He has to go around things, whatever. Okay? So, and the third one is to attack his subconscious. We've done other Whiteboard Wednesdays on flinch response and things like that. So this is a big picture kind of thing. You can go back to other lessons and other videos and other training and whatnot, and just slide those in to these certain pockets. How are we doing that? How are we doing that? Right? Watch Hatsumi Sensei do a technique. Watch anybody online, or you'll know whether or not this person is even worth a grain of salt, because their technique may be technically correct, but their alignment as far as a barrier is shit, right? Or they're muscling things, or, right? You can make a technique work, but at the upper levels, right? And on top of that, I talked about not worrying about the legal system until you worry about revenge. But if you're putting in brute force and it looks to everybody, witnesses, video cameras, and all that, that you did that thing and you caused major damage, involuntary manslaughter is a bitch. Aggravated assault, it's a bitch. Okay? Because now your problem isn't defending against this guy, and it's not defending against the legal system, because if you lose at that, it may be defending against 3 or 4 guys trying to ass rape you in a freaking prison shower room. Right? And I know how crude that sounds, but there's no nice way to say that. Okay? Or if you came in with skills and the word gets around, you're not going to get into fights. They're just going to shiv you from behind. Okay? That's coming from an ex-federal cop that some people just online said, you weren't this, which is really funny, because in the age of the internet, where you can do a background search on anybody, and if you can't do it for free, you can do it for less than $10 and know everything about their life. So this guy must be living in his mom's basement or something, because, and on top of that, I don't take people seriously because this guy has no profile picture, so we don't know what he looks like. And he has no videos up to show that he actually knows what the hell he's talking about. So guess who's not taking him seriously? Anyway, and you shouldn't either with these assholes that do their thing. Anyway, right? So here's this thing. If we attack his subconscious, right, that's what we're using is flinch response. We're using feints backed up by intent, right? Make sure that your feint isn't just, because if it looks like a feint or a distraction, it's not really one, right? But if I move like I'm trying to jam him, even if I know I'm going to fall short, that's where he responds, because his subconscious, unconscious is worried about, right? The survival mechanism is kicked in. Okay. The amygdala, holy shit, here he comes, sends that message over to the hypothalamus to make shit happen. But if the amygdala doesn't take it seriously, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to fire. Well, I did this, sensei, and he's not flinching. Well, if all you do is move your hand, the only people who are going to flinch are the ones that are already peeing in their pants already. All right? We're talking about defending against somebody who's better than you. Right? Anybody stands a good, decent chance if you're of equal match. Anybody stands a really, really good chance if you outmatch him. This is about dealing with somebody who's better than you, who's deadlier than you, who's more serious than you. In that moment, you better be more serious. But if you turn on the brute force, if you turn on the intent in the wrong way, he jacks up the volume on the stereo or the MP3 player or whatever the hell they call them these days, right? And he's going to come at you harder and faster. He already has the advantage, right? You need to be able to neutralize his advantage. We talked about this in all of these episodes. You need to be able to take away his advantage and control long before he ever realizes that he lost it. If he realizes what you're doing, he will resist. He will counter. He will. Right? This is, again, I keep going back to this term, hey-ho, right? Military strategy. Doesn't matter if we're on a battlefield or back alley or in our living room because this jackwagon came through the front door. Doesn't matter. Okay? This is different. Hatsumi Sensei has always differentiated between conventional martial arts, sport martial arts, and real Budo, real Bujutsu, where there's a constant reminder. Train well. Your life is on the line. This isn't about bragging rights or scoring points. It's about hugging your wife one more time, hugging your boyfriend one more time, hugging your kids one more time, or your grandkids or whatever. This is not the way a lot of people treat this stuff. And I know, watching UFC is cool, watching boxing, yeah, okay, just see, when I watch that stuff, I watch fight style. I watch from a student of hey-ho perspective. So I can recognize when that kind of fighter comes at me. And then go back to the dojo, we can simulate those kind of attacks, and how can we match that and defend against it? Because we're not under the same confines as his opponent in the ring. His opponent in the ring is under the same rules. If he doesn't engage within a certain amount of time, he's penalized points. He can be disqualified. The fight can be called because you didn't engage. I'll let this fucker chase me for 3 blocks. I'm gonna let him do whatever. I don't need to engage. I'm gonna pick my moments if I choose to do anything more than, I don't know, run him over with my car. You can't do that in the ring. No shit. You can't get a car into the ring. Anyway, so, but again, this goes back to this kakureta yosho, right? Understanding and knowing hidden points. Okay. So here's the thing, right? If I can throw the feints backed up by intent or whatever and get them to move contrary to the technique that I'm trying to apply, right? So that either, again, he runs into it or he gives me, you, right, the energy you need when he comes back in. Right? An example of that is, like for my 4th dans, we'll move in for a ganseki and we'll kind of shift around, just kind of bringing things up into place. He's thrown a punch, right? He's winding up for the other one. So I'm going to chase the winding up arm and get behind it, right? So now I have that, but my stomach, my groin is right here in line with his next shot. So when he takes that shot, I don't force a throw. When he takes the shot, I avoid the shot. And the way my body moves, can you see it? When I avoid the shot, my arm comes around and levers him. So I can bait him to give me what I need. So when I avoid, it doesn't matter if I do it or he does it, the result's the same. And there's no in-flight movie. Okay? So the point of all this gets summed up by this phrase, and I think we did it over here, right? Chikara o kanji sasanai, right? This idea of don't let him feel your strength, don't let him feel your power. So he has nothing to play off of, and he has nothing to use against you. If he can feel it, consciously or unconsciously, he's going to resist, counter, right? All kinds of things, okay? So anyway, that's where we're going to wrap this one up. Again, don't forget, Friday class, right? 75 to 90-minute class. It's $5, $4.99 US, okay? Basically, after all the fees come off, I'm paying for the services, right? You guys get this stuff for free, but it cost me, right? And I know it sounds like a good deal to you, but right? If nobody ever signs up for classes, guess who won't be doing this free shit anymore? Because it's not free to me, right? So anyway, again, just to kind of close things out, if you've always wanted to get started with ninjutsu, okay, check out my Foundations of Ninja Self-Defense course. It's a 16-week, well, it was done as a live 16-week course, but there are these 16 modules moving through strike defenses, grab defenses, all kinds of extra skills and whatnot. It's a good place to get started, right? I'll make sure there's a link in the description. Or if you're already farther down the line, you're in the intermediate stages, you're in the advanced stages, you might want to check out the Ninpo Masterclass program. Again, we'll put a link in the description. That's 2 classes a week, right from the dojo. I know you might live in a different part of the world or whatever. They're all recorded, whether you can show up live or you get the recording. The benefit of showing up live, if you get in that program right now, we have like $1,300 worth of extra bonus programs that come along with it. But if you show up live via Zoom, right, you get to ask questions while the class is going on. And in those classes, those are for my Shinobi Kai and black belt level students. So that's this stuff. Whether they're ready for it or not, this is for people that are either ready for it or when they get this stuff that we're doing, it puts their basics, their kihon, into perspective so they don't write them off as, oh, okay, I'm just learning this so I can get my belt so I can get to the advanced stuff. No, the advanced stuff requires that you know this stuff. Okay? Anyway, so that's what I have. Hopefully, we'll see you on Friday. And if not, I'm sure I've given you more than enough to add to your training. But remember, right, just like there's a core, this chushin, to everything that we're doing, don't forget this chushin, right? This sincerity, this authenticity in your practice, okay? Because to not have this chushin is to dishonor your teacher, the soke, and the lineage. And with that, we'll end the lesson. I'll see you next time. Train hard.